Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Alongside Podcast, a podcast of Heritage Baptist Church. The purpose of this podcast is to come alongside fellow followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church. I'm your host, Mike Crump, and today I welcome another HBC Pastoral Assistant to the microphone. You've probably seen this PA on stage helping lead worship, but like a VH1 special, we're going to go behind the music and talk with our very own Adam Stinespring. How you doing, Adam?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I am doing well.
Good.
Welcome to the Alongside Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we're going to start off like we always do and just hearing a little bit about yourself and where you came from. And let's just start with that. Where did you grow up? And what's your church background?
Yeah, I grew up in a little town in West Virginia. It's called Springfield. Most people drive through the area without even realizing they drove through it. There's Virginia, then there's Maryland, and there's a little strip of West Virginia. It's right there.
Right there.
Yeah, it's like an hour off of 81. But yeah, grew up there. My stepdad, who's been around since I was like 4, introduced the family to Jesus. My coming to faith, I assume you've heard of the power team, the guys who smash stuff and then preach the gospel.
Things and tear stuff and it's good
say
stuff.
Jesus is good. Yeah. Well, when I was like 5 or 6, my dad had taken me to the power team performance, and I guess something about smashing ice and blowing up water bottles something helped me see Jesus. But I walked up to the front under my own volition, and I guess I gave my heart to Jesus in whatever capacity I understood it then. Grew up, I would say, probably Baptistic background. We kind of church hopped after we moved from the other side of West Virginia. So when I was like probably 7-ish, we migrated to another part of West Virginia, which is where I would say I grew up. That was Springfield.
Okay.
We kind of hung out in Parkersburg, which was on the west side of West Virginia, for probably like 2 years. I went to private school there, and it was, I would say, more Baptistic place there. And then we came and tried to find something similar, but we kind of went from bigger city, bigger place, into very, very small town. So we kind of hopped around a little bit, settled at a place called Covenant Baptist, and through a couple of those different experiences with churches, God made some awesome connections that would come into play later in my testimony, but also would kind of reveal my giftings for music.
Yeah, wonderful. So, but you went down front during the power team.
Yes.
What age was that again?
Like 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 6 years old, and that's. I find it always encouraging to hear those stories, just because the fact of being able to know Christ and even walk with Christ, even in the not full understanding of all of the Christology and the biblical theology and all that kind of stuff, you still responded to the gospel. And as a kids ministry guy, of course, that lightens my heart very much. So that's super encouraging. Were there other people in your life during this time who are helping you as far as understand the scriptures, helping you know the Bible and know more about Jesus?
Yeah. Whenever I was going to private school on the other side of West Virginia, that was a pretty good, helpful place where the Bible was preached well to those who are a lot younger. When I came to the other side of West Virginia, when we migrated, when I was like 6 or 7, there weren't as many opportunities. There were some youth groups, but I would say my dad was probably the primary discipler.
Okay.
And the love of Jesus was present, but it wasn't like a systematic theology rich environment. But there weren't a lot of big influences. There were a couple of smaller ones. I think just being young, it's hard to recall exactly where they came into play. But there were definitely some influences I would realize and actually connect with later. But we'll get to that later.
Okay, sounds good to me. Yeah. Yeah, when you're growing up like that, growing up in a church, there are all these voices that are speaking into your life that many of them you don't even remember at this time. And I like to think that, in glory we'll be able to remember those things and maybe even talk to those people and thank them for all that they did for sure. So you're in West Virginia. You are coming to grow in your faith. Where does music come in? I'm curious. I mean, were you jamming on it with a boom box or something like that? And it was like, man, I really like this.
Well, my mom recalls me being in the back seat at like 3 or 4 years old, and she loved country music, and Shania Twain was blaring on the radio, and she the first time she really heard me jam was, obviously at 2 years old. I don't know what I'm singing, but it was Shania Twain's "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," and for some reason that was funky enough for a 2-year-old to sing.
Man, well there you go. Okay,
but I'd say that was just her understanding I had interest.
Yeah.
But I was real big into the boy bands.
Really?
Yeah. Whenever, even before like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, there was a group called. I just lost it. Dream Street.
Dream Street. I thought you were going to go New Kids on the Block with me here for a second. I was like, man, that's
not
my
quite.
childhood.
Not quite.
Okay.
But the Dream Street was like 13 and 14-year-olds in a boy band, not a man band, but like a boy band. Yeah, a boy band. And that's kind of where I really started just liking music and singing, and I tried to dance. It was just
that didn't work
it was
out
there.
as well.
Yeah, it was just there.
You can always talk to Tony if you want some lessons. He's really good.
So I've heard. I haven't seen. I'll have to check that out. But I'd say that the worship side of music came into play when I was around 11 or 12. One of the churches that we had been at for a little bit in the new place of like the eastern West Virginia. It was Christ Community. The pastor there had asked me to do special music. Yeah. And I have different feelings about special music now. But then it was kind of just hey, he has a gifting. Let's, have him sing something. Yeah. And the first song I sang in front of people was Christmas Shoes. So
really
pulling on those heartstrings.
Christmas Shoes.
At like 10 or 11 years old.
Christmas Shoes is my least favorite Christmas song of all time.
I can't blame you. It makes me cry a lot.
Okay. Now I'm glad we got this out of the way. All right. So you sang Christmas Shoes, and that kind of gave you a feeling for being in front of the church and singing that way.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and around that time, my parents had gotten my little brother a little ukulele, like the $10 ukulele you can get from Walmart. Yeah. And I started picking out stuff on that, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And my parents were like, man, we should probably get him a guitar. So for my 12th birthday, they got me a guitar, and I skipped to the back of the book because I didn't want to learn how to read the music. I just wanted to play chords and sing. And so that's what I did, and that's kind of where the started playing acoustic guitar as well as singing. And it was very apparent in how I played and kind of my motivations behind why I tried to be excellent, that it was definitely more of a performance, and that'll be kind of part of my testimony later. But it was very performance-oriented, trying to do my best. I don't know who it was for, if it was for me, if it was for the people, if it was for my parents, I don't know, but it was definitely very performance-oriented.
Performance-based, okay. So it amazes me, that you're picking out even Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and that's also like, wow. I mean, if my kid was doing that, I'd be like, man, that's pretty awesome, So that's exciting. So just a natural affinity towards music. Yeah. Now, is it just guitar? Do you play other instruments?
I didn't learn how to play other instruments until a good deal later. The voice was always the primary one. Acoustic was self-taught, never took lessons. I didn't have the motivation to, just because I was one of those kids who things kind of came pretty naturally. So I got frustrated if I had to work at it.
Gotcha.
But later, in college, I learned how to play piano because we have to learn to do the whole keyboard proficiency exam. And then I learned how to play drums from beatboxing, because I loved a cappella music, and
really?
Because I started with beatboxing because I love to do that, and I was like, wait, I just translate, because there's the bass drum and the hi-hat and the, and then you just make beats out of that.
I don't know. I'm just maybe from here that we can start some sort of classic boy band beatboxing thing. I don't know. I'm just seeing like my youthful, desires here, just as far as
just coming to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, I never had the chance, but now I'm 41. It's time.
It's time.
So that's pretty cool that I love beatboxing. I'm not good at it, but I love to listen to people do it because it is fantastic and really talented to hear that. So so a man of many talents, playing all sorts of instruments, beatboxing on the side because you're just that good. How did you talked about the motivation, and I think for anyone who's in ministry, this is a real tension. Mm-hmm. This is a real tension because there is a reality of giftedness that God has given people. In fact, I was reading that this morning in Exodus, where God gave the gifts to the craftsmen for the sake of the tabernacle. And there is always, because we're broken people, a tendency to steer into the performative or for motivations for us and that kind of thing. How did you make that transition? It sounds like there was a transition. And what happened there to kind of help you come full circle there?
Yeah. So it was pretty much performance-based, even through like middle school, through high school. Like my parents and through my own motivations, I wanted to do some talent competitions, things like that. It actually wasn't until I came to Liberty that I saw something different. That's how it started. I came to CFAW, College for a Weekend. My junior year, I had another cool part of my testimony. I won a scholarship while I was at King's Fest. It was like a $16,000 scholarship to go to Liberty. Yeah, but of course, I wanted to consider Liberty after receiving a scholarship.
Yes, of course,
yes. And so I went to College for a Weekend, went to convocation. And obviously, growing up in a small Baptistic background, it was mostly piano and voices, maybe more than one. And there was something special when what song was playing? Oh, it was Cornerstone.
Okay.
And they again, it was a very modern song, but they played it well, they communicated it well, and I remember sitting there and looking out and seeing College for a Weekend people, but also college students just chasing after Jesus in worship. And I just sometimes I get emotional even thinking about it, but it was super powerful because it was different. It wasn't just singing, it wasn't just playing. There were people using music to chase after Jesus. And that's where it started. First of all, I was like, I have to come here and figure out what's different. And I think that could also be another argument for why we need to show the love of Jesus to others in a very tangible and practical way. But that's kind of where it shifted. And when I came to Liberty, that even became more in depth as I learned more about worship, even historically, and kind of was challenged to actually walk with Jesus. And that kind of manifested itself in, wow, I've been trying to perform for, my glory. And then it finally kind of switched to be like, all right, Adam, this isn't for you. I didn't give you this gift to make you known. I gave you this gift to make me known, as in Jesus known. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that Pastor Kevin had a very similar experience when I talked to him. There was that moment where it was like he saw people worshiping, and it did something inside of him that was like, oh wow, this is real. This is legitimate. I want this. Yeah. And I think that it kind of brings us to the importance of corporate worship. In your mind, why is corporate worship as a church so important?
That's a
loaded question.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, it aligns our hearts. I would say that worship is even more than just obviously our music. That was one of the biggest things I learned at Liberty. That was one of the biggest transforming of my mind's, the renewal of my mind, was realizing that worship is a lifestyle. And how we utilize the gift of music to emphasize the truths of God's word. I think that is very powerful. And I think when we declare that with each other and even to each other, declaring those truths in using music, which has the ability to draw the emotional aspects of it,
Yep.
it truly has a greater impact oftentimes than even just saying it.
Yeah.
Right? If I were to say to you, God is good, but then we sing it, there's something special. God has given us that gift of music to truly make it very evident, very apparent, and very impactful.
Yeah.
And I think it is very important for us to not forsake the gathering, but also in that declaring truths together, utilizing the gift of music, I think is very, very important.
Yeah, I think music is a conduit for not just comprehending truth. It can be for that, but there really is an emotive state that we don't want to be led by our emotions as far as in decision making and all that. We have to be very careful, but at the same time, we should not discount our emotions. When I came to know Christ, one of the songs that was played at camp, and it was part of the skit that I watched, was Third Day's Love Song, back when Third Day was just coming on the scene. That was like ancient times. We still had cassettes back then, I think. But it was one of those things, my heart of hearts was just overwhelmed with the truth of God, but it was because of this catalyst of music. And I think with worship music, it has that opportunity to engage the emotions and engage the heart in a way that even spoken word may not in some ways. And so I do think, like you're saying, I love the idea of proclaiming to one another in song as we're corporately worshiping together is such a powerful thing for sure. So back to your testimony, you're in college, you are learning about worship, you are growing in your walk with Christ and maturity towards understanding what it is not, and how this all operates. How did you end up at Heritage?
So in order to complete my degree, I had to do 2 practicum and also an internship. So my first practicum I actually did down the street here at Passion, and that was awesome. I learned some wonderful things there. Got to sit under Jeremy and his teachings there. But then I wanted to kind of, it's a little bit smaller there, so I wanted to kind of get a bigger idea of kind of like a larger church sense as well. I had done some other internships, not for school, but for the learning aspect prior years to this, but I decided to see what Heritage was about. And so contacted Kevin, I think he was the first one I contacted and said, hey, is there any way for me to do a practicum here? And he said, yeah, sure. We actually have a spot down in the youth worship tech realm. And that's kind of how the connection started. So I started helping down there, simultaneously started coming and hearing Nathan preach, and he just, he just really knows how to preach truth to pierce the soul.
Amen.
And after hearing that, and in addition, just kind of seeing the heart behind the worship, the heart behind the ministry and the preaching, and even the people, kind of decided I wanted to continue to come here. So I did an internship after both the practicum, came back here after the summer, got married, and my wife and I continued to come here, and Kevin would ask me to volunteer a few times. It's just started with being in the choir, as all vocals do, and then he saw something a little bit different in me, and he decided to give me the opportunity to lead. And after that, I don't remember. Oh, no, I do remember exactly. So I was serving here, and I was kind of, I had been waiting to see what God was going to do, seeing where he was going to lead next. I had finished my degree, and I was ready to start going into ministry. I had worked at a gutter crew and Walmart, and
Nice.
You have to do what you got to do to pay the bills.
That's
but
very true.
It's that definitely wasn't my calling, and so I was looking for a place to be called to. And Kevin was still very much a mentor, and as I was looking through some places, specifically a one in Bedford, he was like, hey, don't hold me to this yet, but Pastor Nathan was thinking about making you a pastoral assistant. I said, interesting. As I was kind of considering all my options.
Yeah.
And after a lot of prayer, talking with my wife, kind of came to the conclusion that God had something more for me here in the in-depth.
Yeah.
And so the rest is history. Started in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you just mentioned that you recently married not too long ago.
Yeah.
So
like a year and a half, almost 2 years. 2 years will be in October.
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how's married life?
Oh, it's awesome. Being married so much.
Isn't
it's
it
so
great?
much fun. Yeah, it's awesome. It really is.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You're a year in, and you still got the newlywed thing going on, but that's okay. That's all right. It is a blessing. I'm, quite a few years in now, and
Yes.
it just grows, especially when you seek Christ above all. So
Yep.
that's very encouraging. So a lot has really happened over the past couple of years for you.
Yeah.
A lot of transition, a lot of change. How was it dealing with COVID and all this? Because that was kind of a whole new thing as well.
It definitely came with its frustrations. I think that once I became a pastoral assistant, Nathan and his obviously heart for the gospel, but his heart for biblical truth really kind of changed how I thought about it. Because I was definitely one of the, I don't want to wear a mask. I'm not gonna, gonna listen. Fight the powers or whatever. And he kind of gave me a new perspective. Now it didn't come with its frustrations, obviously, but it definitely taught me patience.
Yeah, yeah.
It also taught me obedience. I think that was one of the bigger pieces of COVID. Even more than the frustrations, I learned that we are still called to obey God even when it's not convenient or when we don't like to.
Yeah.
And that involves, submitting before earthly authorities, obviously, to a certain degree. And also kind of learn you pick your battles with people. They're going to have, everybody has opinions. And,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I think you wrapped up a lot of what hopefully many of us have learned during this time. You mentioned that just the term submission. I think we have such a negative connotation in our culture as far as that word is concerned. And granted, I'm sure it has been abused, and know it has been abused. But biblical submission is a good and wonderful thing, and there is great peace and joy even in the midst of that when understood rightly. And so it's neat to hear, and I think that's one thing. Nathan's heart, even just going through the COVID thing, whenever he would talk about this, it was never about, hey, here's my opinion, this is what's. It was always about broadening the understanding in order to make wise decisions. Yeah. And that's what I so appreciated about that and many other things in conversations with him. It's have you considered this? And it just kind of, no, I didn't. And
it's changing our outer garment from judgment and opinionated to love and understanding.
It's a very good way of putting it. So you're a PA now, as a past PA. It's a wonderful wonderful thing. What has surprised you most about being a pastoral assistant? Staff?
Surprised me the most. I don't know. I had done some other internships, and it was. It's not a whole lot different, other than I just kind of get to see a little more in depth of what goes on. I'm a little more involved. Yeah. Honestly, there hasn't been a whole lot of surprises, just a whole lot of growing, a whole lot of observing.
What have you enjoyed most?
To be candid, it's really just been listening to Nathan's leadership and Kevin's leadership and seeing how they tie into each other, and seeing how the heart manifests itself in every aspect. It doesn't just pick and choose where it wants to follow Jesus, but it's an actual, this is inclusive into everything we do. Wow. And I think that's been the most enjoyable aspect, more than, learning tech stuff or, getting better at guitar or whatever. It's been learning and seeing what good biblical leadership looks like.
Wow. I would agree. Coming into Heritage several years ago, it is one of the primary things that was such a blessing to me. Just being able to see godly men lead the church, and it was a welcome joy for sure.
Yeah.
So, what is next for Adam? As you think through the future, you think through the end of being a PA and transitions and what things like, and I know obviously you don't have full understanding, but where's your heart as far as what you want to do in the future?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a specific tangible vision in mind. I don't have like I want to be the worship pastor of a 10 million person church or anything like that.
That's a big church.
Yes, I know. But right now, I have pushed on a lot of doors. Ones that I thought God had opened, but He had just kind of cracked to let me see through, and then kind of brought closed.
Okay.
So I'm in a season of kind of just waiting and seeing, of being content with where I am, wherever that might take me, whether that's after a pastoral assistant, I have to go back to Walmart. Oh my goodness, please no. But kind of just seeing what He has next.
Yeah.
I've had, a couple of conversations with Kevin about what it looks like. And I've been offered to stay around for another year as a PA. I think I will accept that offer because it's been really awesome, and I feel like God has some more for me here. But I'm also open, and I'm not actively pursuing another position. I have been involved with a group called Vanderbloemen, which kind of is a church staffing unit, and they kind of provide some options for me. Like they threw out a place in Missouri, and I was like, I don't know, it's a little bit far. But I'm definitely open to kind of see what He has next. Yeah. And just take it one step at a time.
And I think that open-handedness is always a good thing. I remember when my wife and I came here 7 years ago, and I went to Liberty, and people would ask me all the time, well, so what's next? What's after Liberty? And I had all my friends were like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm going here, I'm doing this, and I was just going, I really have no idea. And so there's both a frustrating aspect of that and also a peace that's in that, because you know that the Lord He's going to lead and guide, and He can be trusted in that. So how can we be praying for you as as people are listening and they're they hear Adam's story? How can they be praying for you specifically?
I would say continued peace in now. There's been a lot of restlessness as I've seen some of my peers like go right into worship leading, and there's been just like a God, why am I not there yet? Now kind of being more into ministry, it's not as prevalent as it was when I was working at Walmart or working at the gutter crew, but there's still a God, what's going to happen? Because I'm in this stage of life where I am learning, and I have ambitions, and I have to keep them in check. Because I think there's a part of it that's like, well, God, when am I going to get the spotlight? And I have to be cautious even now as I'm here, but even looking to the future to ensure that the glory is not for Adam, but the glory is for God. And Amen. It is definitely a day-by-day challenge, even as I wait and even as I do things here. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that honesty, and I would encourage all those who are listening to, even today, just be in prayer for Adam as you're listening to this, and to those ends. And I would say that one of the most, kind of along those same lines, one of the most difficult things in regards to being a pastor or ministry leader in this day and age is that you are surrounded by people who are doing far more and far more glittery things.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And so you see them all, and you look and go, why isn't that me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that there can be these moments of frustration, and so learning contentment, as Paul did, in this and where we are and where God has us, is so crucial, because that is truly Christ is with us. The power of God is with us as we are serving Him in both small and large ways.
Yep.
So, Adam, thank you so much for sharing about that. And now it is time for our question. My deck here has random questions in it. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to ask you one.
Man.
Yeah, this is the best part.
This is Russian roulette.
You know what's interesting is I can always tell who's actually listened to past podcasts, because they do this every podcast, you know. And so I'm both insulted,
I've
but
listened to them, just not all the way
all the way through. Okay.
Yes.
Honesty, I love it. Okay, so here's your question.
All right.
No, we're not going to do that one. That was weird. that was a weird one.
That's okay.
All right, this is a good one. Which living person do you most admire?
Ooh, man. There could be some big toes to step on here.
Oh yeah.
some hearts to break.
Hearts
some
to
feelings
break.
feelings to hurt.
It's good. They can learn contentment.
Living person. I have to pick one.
Yeah, and you don't have to say me. I mean, I know that's where you want to go, but
yeah,
you don't,
I was like,
have,
I didn't want to blow up your head too much. I was thinking about it, and I didn't. I have an incredible respect for my dad, my stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there since I was like 4, so he's basically dad.
Yeah.
But he might not have all the answers theologically.
Mm-hmm.
He might not always have the best perfect way of explaining things, but who does, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But he has, he's been an incredible rock for a family whose backgrounds have been pretty rough.
Yeah.
And has continued to share the love of Jesus even amidst trials, opposition, and I'd say that's where my highest respects on earth go to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much again for taking the time to join me here on Alongside. It is a pleasure, and now that I know that you are an avid beatboxer, I'm still chasing my dreams. Okay.
Bring it on.
So, well, this has been another episode of the Alongside podcast. For more details on Alongside, including show notes, past episodes, and more, you can visit alongsidepodcast.com. I'm your host, Mike Crump. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you'll join us next time as we continue to come alongside others who are following Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church.